Marcus Chun pushed a wheelchair through Terminal C of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this job for years. His worn navy blue airport employee vest hung loosely on his thin frame, and his sneakers, held together more by duct tape than original stitching, squeaked slightly on the polished floor as he navigated through the crowded terminal. "Watch it, old man." A businessman in an expensive suit barked as Marcus nearly brushed past him while helping an elderly passenger to her gate. Marcus simply nodded and continued on, his weathered face showing no reaction. At 68 years old, he'd learned that some battles weren't worth fighting. The businessman muttered something about minimum wage workers and stormed off, never knowing that the man he just insulted had once commanded 40,000 troops. Because Marcus Chin was hiding in plain sight, the stooped, quiet wheelchair pusher who took every shift nobody else wanted, who wore the same tattered clothes every day, who ate his lunch alone in the break room, was actually retired 4-star General Marcus Chun, one of the most decorated military commanders in modern American history. But nobody at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport knew that. Not his supervisor, Linda, who constantly complained about his slow pace. Not his co-workers, who barely acknowledged his existence. Not the hundreds of passengers he helped every week, who rarely even made eye contact with him. Marcus had been working at the airport for 3 years now, ever since his wife Catherine had passed away. After 42 years of military service spanning Vietnam, Desert Storm, and Iraq, after commanding divisions and advising presidents, after a lifetime of purpose and meaning, he'd found himself utterly lost in retirement. The big house in the suburbs felt empty without Catherine. The silence was deafening. The meaninglessness of days without mission or purpose nearly broke him. So he'd taken the first job he could find that involved helping people. No resume, no references, just showed up at the airport's human resources office and asked if they needed anyone to push wheelchairs. They looked at this old Asian man with kind eyes and sad shoulders and hired him on the spot at minimum wage. For 3 years, Marcus had pushed wheelchairs, carried bags, helped confused travelers find their gates. He worked the early morning shifts that nobody wanted, the late-night arrivals, the holidays when other employees called in sick. He never complained, never asked for time off, never caused any problems. He was invisible, forgettable, exactly what he wanted to be, until today. Today, everything was about to change. It started with a commotion at Gate 47. Marcus was helping an elderly woman with a walker when he heard raised voices and saw a crowd gathering. Airport security was trying to calm down a man in his 30s who was shouting about stolen luggage and misconnections. "I don't care about your policies," the man yelled at the gate agent. "I have a business meeting that could make or break my company, and your airline lost my bag with all my presentation materials." Marcus recognized the type, stressed businessman, probably flying too much, taking out frustration on people just doing their jobs. He dealt with officers like this in the military, men who thought volume equaled authority. But then Marcus noticed something that made him pause. The man's briefcase, sitting on the floor during his tirade, had a military unit patch sewn onto it. Not just any unit, the 101st Airborne Division. And not just that, but a specific battalion marker that Marcus recognized immediately. His battalion. The one he commanded 30 years ago. Marcus wheeled his passenger closer, curiosity pulling him toward a past he'd tried to leave behind. As he got nearer, he could hear more of the conversation. "My father was in the Army," the man was saying to the gate agent, as if that somehow made his complaint more valid. "He taught me to stand up for myself, to demand respect. He wouldn't let people push him around like this." "Sir, I understand you're frustrated," the gate agent said with admirable patience, "but I'm doing everything I can to locate your luggage." "Not good enough. Do you know who I am?" "Derek Morrison, CEO of Morrison Tech Solutions. I employ 300 people. I deserve better treatment than this." Marcus froze. Morrison? He'd known a Morrison in his battalion. Staff Sergeant James Morrison, one of the finest soldiers he'd ever commanded. They'd served together during Desert Storm, and James had saved multiple lives during a particularly brutal engagement. Marcus had personally recommended him for the Silver Star. Could this angry businessman be James's son? Marcus approached slowly, his wheelchair abandoned for the moment. "Excuse me," he said quietly to the shouting man. "Did you say your father was in the Army?" Derek whirled on him, taking the shabby airport employee uniform and worn sneakers. "What's it to you, Grandpa? You looking for a tip? I don't have time for this." "Your patch," Marcus said, pointing to the briefcase. 101st Airborne, 2nd Brigade. That's a specific unit. Did your father serve with them? Derek's expression shifted slightly, suspicion replacing some of the anger. "Yeah, so what?" "He was in the Gulf War. Staff Sergeant James Morrison. Not that it's any of your business." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. It was him. This was James Morrison's son. "Is your father still living?" "Why are you asking me this?" "Look, old man, I don't have time for conversation. I have real problems to deal with." "Your father saved my life," Marcus said simply. Derek stopped mid-rant, staring at this elderly airport employee. "What did you say?" "February 27th, 1991. Iraq. Our convoy was ambushed. Your father pulled me from a burning vehicle while under enemy fire. I was unconscious, couldn't move. He could have saved himself, but he came back for me. I owe him everything." Derek's anger melted into confusion. "You served with my dad?" "I did." "Is he well?" Derek's expression crumbled. "He died 6 months ago. Heart attack. He was only 65. Marcus felt the news like a physical blow. James Morrison, that brave young sergeant who became a friend and trusted soldier, was gone. "I'm very sorry for your loss. Your father was a remarkable man." "You really served with him?" Derek asked, his earlier hostility completely gone now. He never talked much about the war, but he kept that patch on everything he owned. Said his unit was family. "We were," Marcus said softly, "the best men I ever served with. Your father was one of the finest among them." Derek suddenly seemed to see Marcus for the first time, really see him, not as an obstacle or an annoyance, but as a human being with his own story. "What's your name?" "Marcus Chun." Derek's eyes widened. "Chun? Wait, my dad had a CO named Chun. He talked about him sometimes. Said he was the best leader he'd ever known. Said he'd follow Commander Chun into hell if he had to." Derek looked Marcus up and down, clearly trying to reconcile the shabby airport employee with the military commander his father had respected. Were you an officer?" Marcus nodded slightly. "A long time ago." "What rank?" Marcus hesitated. He'd worked so hard to be invisible, to escape the weight of his former life. But standing here, talking about James Morrison, lying felt like a disservice to his old friend's memory. "I retired as a 4-star general." Derek literally stumbled backward. "You're that Chin? General Marcus Chin? The one they call the soldier's general? The one who commanded the division in Iraq? The one who—" He stopped, looking around at the airport terminal, at Marcus's shabby uniform and taped-together shoes. "What are you doing pushing wheelchairs in an airport?" "Helping people," Marcus said simply. "Same as I did in the Army, just different uniforms." A security supervisor approached, drawn by the earlier commotion. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem." Derek said quickly, his entire demeanor changed. "Actually, I need to apologize. I was out of line earlier." He turned to the gate agent. "I'm sorry for yelling at you. You were just doing your job." The gate agent looked stunned by the sudden reversal. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." Derek turned back to Marcus. "General Chun, can I buy you coffee? I know you're working, but I'd really like to hear about my father, the stories he never told me." Marcus glanced at his supervisor, Linda, who was watching from a distance with narrowed eyes. She'd already written him up twice this month for taking unauthorized breaks. But looking at Derek's face, seeing the hunger for connection with his deceased father, Marcus made a decision. "I have 15 minutes before my next assignment," Marcus said. "Coffee sounds good." They settled into a small airport cafe, Marcus in his shabby uniform, Derek in his expensive business suit, an unlikely pair that drew curious glances from other travelers. Marcus ordered black coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, despite Derek's insistence that he'd pay for anything Marcus wanted. "Tell me about him," Derek said once they were seated, "Tell me who my father was before he was just Dad. Before he was a guy who fell asleep in his recliner watching the History Channel. Before the heart attack that killed him before I could say goodbye." Marcus leaned back, memories flooding in. "Your father was 24 years old when I first met him. Fresh-faced, eager, terrified but trying not to show it. This was Desert Storm, his first real deployment. He joined the Army right out of high school, trained hard, but nothing really prepares you for combat. What was he like? Brave. Not the reckless kind of brave, but the kind that comes from caring about your fellow soldiers more than yourself. He had this ability to stay calm when everything was chaos. Other soldiers looked to him naturally. Even though he was just a sergeant, he had a gift for leadership. Derek hung on every word. He never told me any of this. He'd deflect whenever I asked about the war. Say it was just a job and change the subject. A lot of us did that, Marcus said. It's hard to explain combat to people who haven't experienced it. Hard to share the parts of yourself that saw things, did things that don't fit into normal conversation over dinner. Tell me about the day he saved you. Marcus took a sip of coffee, organizing memories he'd tried not to revisit. We were on a convoy, moving supplies to a forward position. Intelligence said the route was clear, but intelligence was wrong. The lead vehicle hit an IED, improvised explosive device. Everything happened so fast. Ambush positions opened up from 3 sides. My vehicle took an RPG hit, rocket-propelled grenade. The explosion flipped us. I was thrown clear, but knocked unconscious. The vehicle caught fire. Derek was completely still, absorbed in the story. When I came to, I was being dragged away from a vehicle. Your father had me in a fireman's carry, moving as fast as he could while enemy rounds kicked up dirt around us. He got me to cover behind a berm, checked me for injuries, then went back for the driver who was still trapped. The vehicle exploded 30 seconds after he pulled the driver out. If he'd been any slower, they'd both have died. And then what happened? We held that position for 40 minutes until reinforcements arrived. Your father organized a defense, coordinated fire, kept everyone calm. He was magnificent. When it was over, I recommended him for the Silver Star. He deserved it. Derek's eyes were wet. He got that medal. It was in a box in his closet, along with his other military stuff. My mom wanted to display it, but Dad always said no, said it wasn't about showing off. I never understood why he downplayed it. Because for your father, it wasn't about the recognition. It was about the mission, about the men beside him. That's what made him a great soldier. They sat in silence for a moment, honoring the memory of a good man gone too soon. General Chun, Derek said finally, "Can I ask you something? Why are you here? I don't mean to be rude, but you're a 4-star general. You commanded divisions. You advised presidents. My dad had a newspaper clipping about you getting the Medal of Honor for actions in Vietnam. And now you're pushing wheelchairs for minimum wage? What happened?" Marcus looked down at his coffee, at his worn hands wrapped around the cheap paper cup. "My wife died 3 years ago. Catherine, we've been married for 44 years. She was my everything, my anchor, my reason for coming home from every deployment. When I lost her, I lost myself too. I'm sorry," Derek said softly. "I retired from the Army, sold our house because it was too full of memories, moved to a small apartment. I had my pension, my savings. I didn't need to work, but I needed purpose. I tried doing nothing, tried just existing, and I was miserable. Suicidal, actually. One night, I was standing on my balcony, 7 stories up, seriously considering jumping." Derek's expression was stricken. "But I thought about Catherine, about what she'd say if she knew I was considering ending my life. She'd be furious. She'd tell me to find a way to serve, to help people, to use my years and experience to make a difference, even a small one. So the next morning, I came here and asked for a job. Any job. They needed wheelchair pushers, so that's what I became. But why hide who you are? You could have disclosed your background, probably gotten a management position, been treated with respect." "I didn't want respect based on my past," Marcus explained. "I wanted to be useful in the present. and I want to be invisible. After 42 years of command, of making decisions that affected thousands of lives, of carrying responsibility that sometimes crushed me, I wanted to just be a simple worker helping people get from point A to point B. No stakes, no life or death choices, just kindness and service. But they treat you terribly, Derek said. I've been watching since we sat down. Your supervisor keeps glaring at you. Other employees ignore you. Passengers walk past you like you're furniture. Doesn't that bother you? Marcus shrugged. People see what they expect to see. They see an old Asian man in a cheap uniform doing menial labor, and they make assumptions. They don't see the person behind the role. It's okay. I made my peace with invisibility. Well, it's not okay, Derek said firmly. My father saved your life. You mentored him, led him, helped make him the man who raised me. I owe you for that. And I'm not going to let you continue being disrespected like this. Derek, I appreciate the sentiment, but no, listen. I own a tech company. We're about to close a major government contract. I have connections, resources, influence. Let me help you. At the very least, let me talk to airport management about how you're being treated. That's not necessary. Maybe not necessary, but it's right. My dad always said that when someone helps you, you pass it forward. You helped my father, shaped his career, saved his life in many ways. Now let me help you. Marcus started to object again, but Linda, his supervisor, appeared at their table. Chun, your break ended 5 minutes ago. We have a backlog of passengers needing assistance. Get back to work. She said it dismissively, not even looking at Marcus, clearly viewing him as a problem employee rather than a person. Derek stood up slowly, his businessman persona snapping back into place. Excuse me, who are you? Linda looked him over, recognizing expensive clothes and the air of authority. Her tone shifted slightly. I'm Linda Patterson, wheelchair services supervisor. And you are? Derek Morrison. And I'm curious about your employee policies. Do you typically speak to your workers with such disrespect? Linda's eyes narrowed. Sir, this doesn't concern you. Chun is habitually slow, frequently takes long breaks, and doesn't follow protocol. Chun, Derek repeated, smiling without warmth. You mean General Chin? Linda blinked. I'm sorry, what? This man you just ordered around like a servant? He's a retired 4-star general, one of the most decorated soldiers in American history. He commanded divisions, advised presidents, earned the Medal of Honor. And you're complaining about him taking a 15-minute coffee break. Linda's face went pale. That can't be true. He's just a wheelchair pusher. He applied for minimum wage. His application didn't mention anything about being a war hero, about 42 years of distinguished service, about being one of the finest military minds of his generation. Derek pulled out his phone. Would you like me to show you? Because there are hundreds of articles about General Marcus Chun, including his retirement ceremony 3 years ago where the president personally thanked him for his service. Linda looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time in 3 years. Is this true? Marcus sighed. His carefully constructed invisibility was crumbling. It's true, but I took this job to help people, not to be treated differently because of my past. I don't understand, Linda stammered. Why would a general work as a wheelchair pusher? Because it's honest work, Marcus said simply. Because it helps people. Because after spending a lifetime in command, I wanted to serve in the simplest, purest way possible. No rank, no authority, just kindness and assistance. A small crowd was gathering now. Other airport employees, drawn by the commotion. Passengers pausing mid-stride, sensing drama unfolding. Derek wasn't finished. Linda's it? Let me tell you what I've observed in the 20 minutes I've been watching. I've seen you berate this man twice for petty infractions. I've seen other employees ignore him or treat him with barely concealed contempt. I've seen passengers walk past him without acknowledgement, and I've seen him accept all of it with grace and dignity, never complaining, never demanding the respect his service earned. But I'm not as gracious as he is. Linda was backpedaling now. I had no idea. If I'd known. If you'd known, you'd have treated him better? Why does it take learning about his military service to treat a worker with basic human decency? Shouldn't all your employees be treated with respect, regardless of their background? The crowd murmured agreement. Airport security was approaching now, drawn by the gathering crowd, but Derek held up a hand. No problem here. Officers. Just having a conversation about respect and recognition. One of the security guards, an older man with kind eyes, looked at Marcus and gasped. General Chin? Sir, is that you? Marcus looked up, recognition dawning. Tom? Tom Rodriguez. The security guard snapped to attention, saluting crisply. Staff Sergeant Tom Rodriguez, retired. Sir, I served under your command in Iraq. 2004. You saved my entire squad when we were pinned down in Fallujah. Now more airport employees were pulling out phones, searching General Marcus Chun. Gasps and exclamations rippled to the growing crowd as they found articles, photos, information about the man they'd been ignoring for 3 years. He got the Medal of Honor in Vietnam. He commanded the division during the Iraq surge. The president awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Linda looked like she wanted to disappear into floor. General Chun, I'm so sorry. If I had known, stop, Marcus said, his voice carrying unexpected authority. The crowd fell silent. Don't apologize because you learned about my past. Apologize because you've been treating a human being with disrespect. It shouldn't matter if I'm a general or a janitor. Every worker deserves dignity. Every person deserves basic kindness. He stood, and despite his shabby clothes and worn sneakers, there was suddenly something unmistakably commanding about his presence. I took this job because I wanted to serve, not to be thanked or recognized or treated as special. I wanted to help people in the simplest way possible, and I've done that for 3 years, and it's been meaningful work. But, sir, Tom Rodriguez said, still at attention, you shouldn't be treated like this. You're a hero. No, Marcus said firmly. I'm a veteran. There's a difference. Heroes are made in moments. Veterans are shaped by lifetimes of service. And when that service ends, we're just people trying to find new ways to contribute. I found mine pushing wheelchairs. There's no shame in that. Derek stepped forward. General, with all due respect, while your humility is admirable, people need to know who you are, not for your benefit, but as an example, you're showing that service doesn't end with retirement. That dignity isn't determined by job title, that the most decorated general and the most humble worker can be the same person. Marcus looked at Derek, seeing James Morrison's eyes in his son's face. Your father would have said something similar. He had a way of cutting through my tendency to downplay things. Then let me honor him by making sure his commander gets the recognition he deserves. I don't need recognition, Marcus said, but I appreciate the sentiment. An airport executive arrived, alerted by security. General Chin, I'm Richard Hartley, Director of Operations. I had no idea we had someone of your stature working here. This is extraordinary. We'd like to do something to honor your service, perhaps a ceremony, or you could just let me do my job. Marcus interrupted gently. I like helping passengers. I like being useful. If you want to honor my service, treat all your employees with the dignity they deserve. Pay them fair wages. Give them respect. That would mean more than any ceremony. Richard Hartley looked genuinely moved. General, I can do better than that. We'd like to create a new position for you, Ambassador of Service. You'd still help passengers, but you'd also train our employees in your approach to service. Help us build a culture of dignity and respect. And we'd pay you accordingly. Marcus considered this. Would I still get to push wheelchairs? If you want to, absolutely. Then I accept, but on one condition. Every employee here gets a raise. Not just me. Everyone. The janitors, the ticket agents, the baggage handlers. Everyone. If you can afford to pay me more, you can afford to pay them more too. Richard glanced at his assistant, who was frantically calculating on a tablet. General, that would cost the airport millions annually. Then that's my price, Marcus said simply. Take it or leave it. Derek laughed out loud. That's exactly the kind of thing my father told me you'd do. He said you always put your soldiers first, no matter what it costs you personally. Richard Hartley smiled, extending his hand. Deal. I'll take it to the board, but I'm confident we can make it work. You've just negotiated the biggest across-the-board raise in this airport's history. The crowd erupted in applause. Airport workers were hugging, crying, celebrating. Marcus stood there, slightly overwhelmed, still processing how quickly his carefully constructed invisibility had shattered. There's one more thing, Derek said. General, you mentioned you live in a small apartment, that you sold your house after your wife passed. Where exactly are you living? Small place near the airport. Efficient, close to work. How small? Marcus hesitated. Studio efficiency. About 400 square feet. Derek's jaw tightened. And what do you do in your free time? Work, mostly. I pick up extra shifts. Go home, sleep, come back. No hobbies? No friends? No life outside this airport. I have life. I help people. That's enough. It's not enough, Derek said firmly. My father wouldn't want you living like this. Catherine wouldn't want you living like this. Sir, with respect, you're hiding from life, not living it. Marcus felt something crack inside him. What else is there? Catherine was my life, my purpose, my reason for everything. Without her, I'm just existing. No, sir, Tom Rodriguez said. You're not just existing. You're serving. You're helping. You're making a difference. But you're doing it alone, in the shadows, like you don't deserve to be part of the world anymore. That's not right. I don't know how to be anything else, Marcus admitted quietly, and it was the first truly vulnerable thing he'd said in 3 years. Derek pulled out his phone. General Chun, I'm going to give you my personal number, and I'm going to call you every week to check in, and I'm going to introduce you to the veterans community in Dallas. People who understand what you're going through, who can help you build a life that honors Catherine's memory without hiding from existence. I don't need, yes, you do, and more importantly, we need you. The veterans community needs leaders like you, people who understand service, who can mentor the next generation. My dad's been gone 6 months, and I've been lost without his guidance. I could use a mentor, and I know dozens of other veterans who could too. Marcus looked around at the crowd of airport employees, at Tom Rodriguez still standing at attention, at Derek Morrison with his father's eyes and determination, at Linda Patterson looking mortified at how she treated him, at all these people suddenly seeing him when he tried so hard to be invisible. And he realized that maybe invisibility wasn't what he needed after all. Maybe Catherine wouldn't want him hiding. Maybe she'd want him living, connecting, leading again in whatever way he could. Okay, Marcus said finally, I'll take your number. I'll meet your veterans. I'll try to do more than just exist. Derek smiled. That's all we're asking, General. Just try. The crowd began to disperse, but the energy had shifted. Airport employees who'd ignored Marcus for 3 years suddenly wanted to shake his hand, hear his stories, thank him for his service. He was patient with each one, answering questions, accepting gratitude, slowly emerging from the shell he'd built around himself. Linda approached last, clearly nervous. General Chun, I owe you a real apology. Not because I didn't know your background, but because I treated you poorly regardless. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, Marcus said. Just remember this feeling, Linda. Remember that every person you supervise has a story, has dignity, deserves respect. Treat everyone as if they might be more than they appear. I will, sir. I promise. As his shift ended that evening, Marcus went to his locker to retrieve his things. The locker where, hidden behind his lunch bag and extra vest, his dress uniform still hung. The uniform he'd kept but never worn, the one with 4 stars on the shoulders and rows of ribbons on the chest. The Medal of Honor, still in its case, tucked in the top shelf. He'd kept these reminders of who he'd been while trying to forget. But maybe, he thought as he touched the uniform fabric gently, maybe it was time to integrate all the parts of himself. The general and the wheelchair pusher, the commander and the helper, the war hero and the grieving widower. Maybe he could be all of those things at once. Derek was waiting for him outside the employee entrance. General, can I give you a ride home? That's not necessary. I take the bus. I know, but today let me drive you. And on the way, I want to tell you about my dad's funeral, about what he said about you in the letter he left for me to read after he was gone. Marcus felt tears threatening. James left a letter? He did, and you're in it. He wanted me to find you, to thank you for making him the soldier and man he became. He said you taught him that leadership isn't about power, it's about service. That honor isn't about recognition. It's about doing right when no one's watching. He said you were the best commanding officer he ever had, and that he tried to live up to your example every day of his life. Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded and followed Derek to his car. As they drove through Dallas traffic, Derek continued. He told me that if I ever met you, I should tell you something. He said to tell you that saving your life in Iraq was the easiest decision he ever made, because you'd already saved his life 100 times by teaching him what it meant to be a soldier. He saved mine, Marcus said hoarsely. Not just in Iraq, but today, his son did. You reminded me that hiding isn't the same as healing. Thank you, Derek. Thank my dad. He's the one who taught me to recognize heroes, even when they're wearing worn-out sneakers. That night, Marcus sat in his small apartment, looking at the photo of Catherine he kept by his bed. I'm going to try, he told her picture. I'm going to try to live again, not just exist. I think that's what you'd want. The next morning, when Marcus reported for work, he found that his locker had been moved. He was now in the employee leadership section, with a nameplate that read General Marcus Chun, Ambassador Service. And instead of his old worn vest, there was a new uniform waiting. Still simple, still practical for pushing wheelchairs, but with embroidered stars on the collar and an American flag patch on the shoulder. A uniform that honored both who he'd been and who he'd become. Marcus put on, laced up his taped-together sneakers, one last time, and headed out to the terminal. He had wheelchairs to push, passengers to help, lives to touch in small ways. But now he'd do it as himself, all of himself. The general who'd become a helper, the commander who'd learned that the best way to lead was sometimes to serve invisibly, the war hero who discovered that the most important battles were often the quiet ones against loneliness, despair, and meaninglessness. He had work to do, people to help, purpose to fulfill, and for the first time in 3 years, General Marcus Chun felt like he was home.